So what are some accessories that we can bring on, how to bring up these weaknesses that we see? Like I said, typically you have conventional, usually fails at the lockout. Sumo usually fails at the bottom, usually. Unless you just have unless you did have enough muscle to get it up, but then something happens around the transition period and you get it out in front of you and then you can't lock it out. But typically that's it. Showed here are two accessory movements that I like to use. Block pulls, and they have little baby blocks, but block pulls and deficit deads. Well, what are these going to do? Well, if you're weak off the floor, deficit deadlifts. And I would say that conventional deficit deadlifts, whether you're sumo or conventional, doesn't matter, are, because what's lifting off the floor? It's really your hamstrings. Your hamstrings are quads with the sumo some, but your hamstrings are usually what's the limiting factor. So conventional deficits, stiff bar deadlifts. You know, here we have two different deadlift bars. Pulling on a regular bar is a lot harder than a deadlift bar. Why? Deadlift bars are longer, skinnier, more whip. So that pulling that slack out becomes even a lot more important with a deadlift bar than with a regular bar. You want to challenge yourself. Go back to when you used to train at Gold's or wherever you used to train at that didn't have a specialty bar, and remember how hard that was. And it'll make you stronger in the long run. Don't do it all the time, but it's one of those things to throw in the mix. Tools in the toolbox. And like I said before, squats train the deadlift. We've all seen Smolov, right? Or heard of it at least, read a little bit about it, if you haven't Googled it. But you see Smolov program for squat, and there's really not a lot of deadlifting going on. But yet, people when they run Smolov, their deadlifts tend to go up. Wait a minute, I thought specificity, you have to train specifically to have an adaptation. Not necessarily. Depends on your skill level, for one. But for two, you're using a lot of the same muscles. So if you're getting your hamstrings and quads bigger, then it's going to translate some to deadlift. I wouldn't recommend just squatting all the way up into a competition, but off season, squat is a great accessory for deadlift. And it's a lot less strenuous on yourself. Deadlifts take a lot longer to heal in general because hamstrings are bigger muscles. Bigger muscles take longer to heal. So front squats for sumo, more quad dominant. Low bar back squats for conventional, more posterior chain. So if you have a weak lockout, what do? Well, a few things. You can do bands, chains, all that kind of thing, which I like a little bit of band. I'm not a huge band chain person, but it can help with the top part, that if you don't stay engaged, it's just going to go straight back down. But my more favored accessory movements are block pulls, not rack pulls. I don't like rack pulls. I don't like rack pulls because people tend to cheat themselves and get into a better position. And look at me, I can now rack pull 450. Okay, that's great, but you can't block pull 450. Why? Because you're not in the same position as your deadlift. Oh, I can rack pull 450, but I can't break 400 off the ground. Well, if you're not even going to get in the same position that you are in your lift, why do it? You're at better leverages with a rack pull than a block pull. With a block pull, put it right up to your shins, and you can get in the same position that you'd be starting at, or in the middle of your lift, as it were. And that really works specifically your weakness. Rows are another great exercise. Well, you're like, well, that's not posterior chain. Why am I doing rows? Well, your back, if your back isn't tight, you're more than likely not going to be able to lock out a heavy deadlift, because your back, right here, the top part is where you're using your back, right? In rows, it's a lot of isometric contraction. You're holding your back there, and yeah, you're using your lats when you pull, but having your back tight for 3 sets of 8 or however many is teaching you to brace your back. just like you should be bracing for a deadlift. Stiff leg deadlifts, you don't want to get in bad habits, but stiff leg deadlifts put more emphasis on that glute ham all the way up and down, and that helps with that power off the ground. And then of course glute specific work. Glute specific work, whether it be glute ham raises, RDLs with a band going, like if the band is back that way, you lift it up so it's pushing you back, so you have something to push against. Hip thrusts, also known as hip bridges, same type of thing, yeah.
Going back to the rows, would you say that just a standard bent over row is more effective as an accessory than like a pendulum row? Because I use them both.
Personal opinion, I don't like pendulum rows. Personal opinion. Rich loves them. Personal opinion, I don't get as much out of them because I don't keep my back tight. I get that loose at the bottom and then I go. I think you have to look at why you're doing it, but for me, I tend to like bent over rows better than pendulum rows. Once again, spaghetti sauce. Yes.
Good morning.
Other assistance exercises. Nice transition. Thanks, Coach. So, as he said, good mornings are another great assistance exercise because you need to have that back strong. And a lot of this is more specific for conventional, but you need to have a strong back for sumo too. It's just a little less back than conventional. So RDLs, hit your glutes and your hams. Good mornings, your lower back, depending on how you do your good mornings. You do wide stance, stiff leg, or wide stance, arch back, you're gonna get a lot in the hamstring and glute region as well. Static holds at transition, pull-ups, upper back. Like I said, you don't allow yourself, your upper back to stay tight. You're going to round it, and then that lockout is going to be darn near impossible. One of my favorite assistance exercises are pause deadlifts, or I think they're called transitional deadlifts, static holds. There's lots of different words for them. Halting deadlifts, that's the other term I was looking for. But you pick your transition, and normally it's around the knees, and you hold it there for a 1 second, 2 second, or 3 second count, and then power through. 2 sets of 4, 4 sets of 4, something like that. Because you're going to be holding it, so obviously you're going to be using a lot less weight. But that will keep you to stay in position at that spot. For me, when I'm in sumo, I tend to get forward a little bit, right around the knees. So if I do a halting deadlift right at my knees, I teach myself to stay tight. I teach myself to bring it up my shins and to hold it there. So hopefully that will translate to my 1 rep max. That I might have a better chance of keeping it closer to me by working that particular transition.
Jen, you have any show where you're talking about?
Please. I have a thingy on, so. So a halting deadlift or a pause deadlift, you're going to get it off the floor. You're going to bring it anywhere from there to a little bit higher. The next one. To there and up. And where exactly you stop kind of depends on where your weakness is. Video yourself. Video, video, video. I mean, we have gigs on our phones. You can use a few megabytes to video yourself. You don't have to save it. You just need to get that instant feedback. We get to bad habits and we don't even realize it because we can't see ourselves. From our perspective, we look like we're doing the same thing. But maybe you've widened your stance and you don't realize it. Maybe you're getting forward and you don't realize it. Use that video, see where your form is breaking down, pick that apart, and stop it. Hit that weakness. And then, obviously, especially with conventional, how many times have you been to a meet? The guy gets up there, he lifts, he lifts, he lifts, he gets it all the way up, and it just falls back down. And he goes, damn it, hand! Grip work. The stronger that your grip is, the more mentally you're going to be ready to lift that weight. So one of the best grip works is just holding a bar. Hold it like this. That gets easy for 30 seconds, put some weight on. Put some weight on. If you can hold a bar for 30 seconds, that's a lot longer than any deadlift is going to be. You're going to get that, kind of like what Rich was talking about with the bench. When you hold on to that bench real tight, the irradiation where it's tightening up everything. Well, same is true with the deadlift. You're holding on to that thing and you have good forearm strength, good grip strength, it's going to make it feel that much lighter. Have you ever been to a gym where you couldn't use chalk? Maybe a U-Fit, I hate to say it, where they have slippery bars, you can't use chalk, and you forgot your straps. How good of a deadlift session do you have? Not a very good deadlift session, is it? Why? Because you're not using your grip. So it's like going to a U-Fit every day if you don't work on your grip strength. Built-in chalk. You're going to get better at feeling the weight, feeling it in your hands, and you're going to know that it's not going to move, and you're going to get this weight. That's just one more variable that you don't need to worry about having strong grip. And this is my last slide. So I'm going to briefly touch on programming. I don't know how many of you are coaches or just athletes or whatever, but programming, and there's 1,000 different ways to do this as well, but these are general guidelines. Your general guidelines with someone who's never deadlifted before, make them deadlift a lot. They're never going to know how to deadlift and find their groove unless they actually do it. You know, oh, well, Rich, he only deadlifts once a week or every 10 days. Well, Rich is a 700-pound deadlifter. Are you a 700-pound deadlifter? Well, then you can do a deadlift a little bit more often. If you're a 135-pound deadlifter, you can deadlift a lot more frequently than someone who's lifting 700-800 pounds. Relative strength here. Obviously, I ain't gonna be deadlifting any 800 pounds anytime soon, but when you're doing triple body weight is an easy way to think about it, or up into that 800, 900 pound range, you're gonna be deadlifting a lot less frequently than someone who is just beginning. So beginners, I would say, go with a little bit higher volume, hone in that technique, make sure that they know what they're doing, and actually sometimes higher volume, like sets of 8, at a pretty low percentage, 60-ish, can help teach you, oh, that was easy, oh, that one was hard, what'd I do different? Okay, that one was easy, that one was good, there we go, oh, that one I got a little out of groove. You can kind of self-regulate your technique by doing reps. Now you get into an intermediate and you're gonna have to be doing something rather than just your regular deadlift form. So if you are a conventional puller, you're gonna have to start maybe adding in some RDLs, some deficits, some block work, some sumo. And then when you get to advanced, I already know what my deadlift feels like. I don't need to hit my sumo deadlift specifically every week. I can do a block pull or deficit and not throw off and not forget how to deadlift. Newbies can't. They're gonna get all confused. You throw 1,000 different ways of variations and you finally get back to number 1 deadlift and they're gonna be like, now how do I do this again? And that's my, I hate to talk negative about anyone's form of training, but that's my caveat to the whole West Side conjugate system, is that for newbies, they don't have that motor technique down, established enough to really be able to move on from that. Get that established first, then you can add in other variations and assistance exercises. So intermediates, you're gonna add in a little bit more assistance exercises, hit those weaknesses. And advanced people like Rich, he's gonna deadlift once a week. Some guys go deadlift from the floor once a week and say block pulls on the second week, and then back to floor, and then maybe bands, and then back to floor. They'll rotate it because they find that they just can't recover from a heavy deadlift session. I mean, that's a lot of weight, you know? Those hamstrings take at least 4 days to recover. You hit them hard. You just can't There's not a smo love for deadlifting. It's a smo love for squats. They just don't recover. Basic linear progression. I am a big fan of just adding 5 pounds as often as you can. When you tend to hit a plateau, that's when you can start to add in a little bit of extra volume, throw around some different things. But basic, I got to my 408 by going up 5 pounds every week. I would go, say, 360, 365, 370. The next week, 365, 370, 375. The next week, 370, 375, ain't gonna go 380, 375 again. So the more that I could up the weight, the better off I would be. And I personally like 1 rep maxes for deadlift, or 1 reps for deadlifts. I think there's a better translation. You can do, who cares how many times you can do a deadlift 315 for? 4 times, 5 times, 6 times. If you can't deadlift 450 or 350, what's it matter how many times you can do 315 for? Yes, they build bigger muscles, but sport specific, going into a powerlifting meet, you want those singles under your belt. You kind of want to know where you're at, what heavyweight feels like. So I really like just a basic singles linear progression. You can do other assistance work to get your volume in, but for me, in my experience, singles is how I grew my deadlift. But it's highly individual. You'll have people who swear by doubles or triples, or, oh no, you need to do this. And if it works for them, then great, that's them. But you're at my seminar, and I'm telling you what works for me. So does anyone have any questions?
What work?
We'll differ a little bit between sumo and conventional. Basically flat as you can. With sumo, wrestling shoes are really good. There's special sumo deadlift shoes out there. I forget who makes them.
Metal. Metal.
There's other ones I was thinking of, but the specific one I was thinking of is pretty much like a wrestling shoe. Has good grip, not much of a sole, huh?
Samples.
Yes, that's it. But they're a little pricey. So I can go to Dick's down the road if I forgot mine at a competition and I'm like, crap, where do I get a pair of wrestling shoes? I can go get a pair of wrestling shoes. Those I'd have to order. For conventional, you can really go anywhere from Chuck Taylors to deadlift shoes, to slippers, to swim socks, to Vibrams, to, I mean, a lot more leeway with the conventional than with a sumo. Because a sumo, you're going to be pulling apart. You don't want something that's, like these would be horrible deadlift shoes because my sole just slides from underneath me.
Are the 5-finger shoes allowed in competition?
Yes. I've used them. Don't buy the cheap ones.
No, I got the Vibrams. Yeah, I like the Vibram 5-finger ones.
I bought the cheap ones thinking, oh, well, I'll save money. They're only like $35 because I can fit in kid sizes. And no, that was, yeah, the only problem with the Vibrams is that you have to cut the toes out of your socks because you need long socks.
Oh, that's true.
So it's a little fun getting them on without having them roll up. But yeah, they work and they're legal. Any other questions?
It seems that so much talk about increasing strength is in the eccentric part of movements, but in deadlift, you don't do that. You're always kind of dropping the weight. Why are we not going slow when we're letting the weight down?
Well, because we're typically doing well in a competition because it's a 1 rep max.
Well,
But in training, actually, I like coming down with control.
Okay.
Actually, I'm teaching one of my lifters right now. He's slowly grasping the concept because if you come down slowly, pretend like you are at a UFit where there's a lunkometer or Planet Fitness and you can't put it down hard, you're going to have to keep everything tight. And it's going to teach you what that feels like to come back up. So I'd suggest that if you want to get stronger, you really should do that. You should not like Okay, not 10 seconds down or anything, but nice and controlled where you're not letting, you're keeping everything engaged and then you're going again. Not a bounce. I don't like touch and go. Personal opinion. I don't like touch and go. They have their place, but the point of the deadlift is that you're going to start from a dead stop. So touch and go gets momentum coming off. Whether you're bumper plates especially, but even metal plates, you're going to get a little bit of bounce. And that can, one, throw you off your groove, and two, make it easier. What good is that? We're trying to get stronger.
I've started using boxing shoes for sumo squats.
How do you like those?
Really good.
Yeah?
I tried with my wrestling shoes, but the boxing shoes, the balls, they have the rubber is a little heavier.
You have a wide foot?
Huh?
You have a wide foot?
Yeah, I got a pretty
The
good.
problem with wrestling shoes, for those of us built like hobbits, is that a wrestling shoe is meant to put a little bit of area on the ground. So what Jenn has no problem with because of the size of her foot, a wrestling shoe, when I wear one, I literally have a 1/4 inch all the way around and my fat foot expands over the bottom of that sole. So as I press to the side, I'm literally going to roll out instead of being able to do what Jenn is advocating.
I guess that's why I like
press
that.
against.
Which that I never even, I'll keep that in mind.
That makes sense.
Keep
That-
that in mind, and if you can get a pair of boxing shoes,
Give them a try, huh?
I got some expensive ones, so
Yeah.
why go with expensive if you can afford them? Try.
I'll keep that in mind too.
The newer people shooting their hips up when you start to pull up, how would you know?
So his question was, a lot of times when we see a deadlifter, I get my sidekick here, shooting their hips up before they actually start to pull. So go ahead and do that. So his hips come up, then he starts to go. Well, typically that happens when, couple things. One, you're setting up too low. You're trying to squat the weight up. Two, you're not loading your hips. So when you load your hips, and what I mean by load your hips is get that balance point where you're holding on to that bar, and if you weren't holding on to that bar, you'd be falling backwards. Push your hips into the bar, and right where, go ahead, and right where you start to drive up is where your hips should be. Take a video of yourself from the side, look at where say your hips are shooting up, and then you're starting to pull. Make a note of where those hips are, then start there.
Wow, that was awesome, Jenn. Thank you so much for all that great deadlift information. Now, if you like that, you're gonna really like this, the 7 worst testosterone killers. It's a free report just for you. Enter your email and we can send you that free report. Now, if you're on a mobile device and can't click that box, check the video description below, that top link, criticalbench.com/bonus-video. That's the link you wanna click so we can send you that free report. Be sure to subscribe to our channel, like this video, and leave some comments or questions for us. Thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.